It's time for us to add more props and grow our level. And we're going to add some props that allow us to keep working with the physics system and do some really cool stuff, and then bring in some interesting new requirements like being able to see a much bigger world. So let's start by taking a look at some of the props that we have available. If you look inside of our items folder and it looks like the items folder has a couple of them. We've got some flags and some keys and some other things. But there's also one, I believe, in tiles. We've got some locks. We've got some lava, some ladders, some switches, and other things. And the one that we're going to start with today is the spring. So we're going to take the spring object. Just search for spring. It should be under art and tiles. Or go to the project view and search for the word spring. SPR. There we go, ing. There's also a sprung. Don't use that. That's the one that's already popped up, the popped up version of the spring. We're going to use the spring. So for the spring, what we're going to do is, first just drag it out into our scene. Before I even do that, though, I do want to double check that my pixels per unit is correct. So it's set to 128 pixels per unit. Here I'm using the full-sized version of it. It goes all the way up to the top, and it matches at that 128. So I should be able to just drag this in and see a nice looking spring. Now I'm going to add a collider to it. Let's start by trying adding a box collider 2D and see what that does. So add a box collider 2D, and notice that this collider is kind of big. It goes all the way up to the top above the size of our sprite. And that's again because our sprite is bigger than the actual image. It's taking up that full space so that it's the full 128 by 128. If we want to use a collider on here, we've got two options. We can either shrink this in half and then move it down about 0.25, a negative 0.25. That'll give me a pretty good box collider. Or I could alternatively add a polygon collider 2D, and that would give me a good collider that matches up perfectly too. I'm going to go with removing the polygon collider and just having a box collider. So I've got a nice square collider that matches, and it's pretty good. I don't need a polygon collider to recreate this shape. I think that is just about close enough for me. So we've got a spring in here, and if I press play, I should be able to run into it and jump on top of it. Let's go see. All right, any second now it should finish building, and we'll be able to run over there. Let's see it. There we go. Our player runs over. I can run into it. You can see that I just kind of run into it and keep running, and I can jump on it and walk on it just like a normal object. Collider looks good. So far, it seems okay. I can even jump off of it. That's perfect, but I want to modify this now and make it so that when I land on this spring, my character bounces up really, really high. To do that, we're going to add in a physics material. We don't have to do any special code or anything like that. We're just going to use the physics system in the way that it's meant to be used and take advantage of some of the cool properties and things that it can do. So I'm going to go to the assets folder of the project window. Go to the root assets folder, right click and create a new folder here. And we're going to call this one physics. This is going to store some physics related assets or data, specifically some physics materials. I'll hit enter to go into it and then right click again in this physics material folder, this physics folder, and we'll choose 2D and we're going to find a physics material 2D. I'm going to name this spring. I could also name it bouncy, but I feel like naming it the thing that I'm going to put it on makes a little bit more sense. And over here in the inspector, notice that we've got two fields, a friction and a bounciness. You can probably guess which value we're going to crank up and which value we're going to turn down. We're going to turn bounciness up to 1, which is the same as 100%. You can't go higher than 1, it won't matter. And we're going to turn friction down to 0, which is obviously 0%. Let's save. And then let's attach this to our spring. So I'll go to the spring. I saved a little too early. And then we'll drag the physics material 2D into this material section of the box collider. Make sure it's on the box collider. Or you can hit the little search and then go select spring. Now I'll save one more time since I actually assigned the material. And then press play and let's see if we can jump and bounce on our spring. All right. Look at that, it bounces, and I just kind of bounce. And if I bounce from a higher spot, I'll bounce back up to that same height. So here we go, I've got some pretty good bouncing. I've got a nice little spring here that I can use in some future development. Now that the spring works though, let's commit it to plastic. So go into plastic and make sure that we've saved our scene and say, added spring with bouncy material. and check in our changes.